Hi guys, welcome back to the webinar number 213. And in this webinar today, we are going to have an introduction to Python basics. We'll be talking about various things related to Python. We'll be talking about some data types, some of the features of Python, which are very helpful in making various processes automated. Then we'll also be talking about different data types, how different functions of Python are useful to us when it comes to executing and doing various tasks. So let's quickly get started. Let's see what do we have got inside the Python. So again, I welcome you all on the behalf of PyNet Labs to this webinar where we are going to explore the Python. So the very first question which I have in my mind is that why only Python? Why not C? Why not C++? Why not Java or any other programming languages? When we talk about programming languages, we have various, right? We have various options. So why only we prefer using Python nowadays? Why is Python so famous? That is the first question which I get in my mind, right? So we are going to first of all get an answer to that why we actually prefer going with Python instead of any other programming languages. So let's see what are few features of Python which makes it a little preferable one. So I hope my screen must be visible to you all. Now, yeah. So why to learn Python? That's my first question. So the very first reason is that Python's syntactual representation is very easy. When you will learn about Python, when you will start learning about the features or the functions of Python, you will find out that it is very much similar to English. So we can say syntactual representation is simple and easy like English. Okay, I just got this notification that there is some echo from my side. Okay, give me a minute. Guys, please confirm, is it better now? All right, great. Okay, perfect. Sorry for the inconvenience. Yeah, so all right, so let's get back to the topic why to learn Python. That is the first question. So the first reason is that the syntactual representation is simple and easy like English. So when you will learn about the various functions of Python, the name of the function is enough to define what exactly it is there for. So now we got the first point. What is the second reason? Let's see. It is a very low barrier so there are very low barriers to enter into Python world as compared to other programming languages. What does that mean? When we talk about other programming languages, there must be some prerequisites. Like the person who is willing to learn, let's say C or C++ or any other programming languages, they must know about few of the things. But when it comes to Python, a person who has no idea, who has zero understanding of programming languages can learn very easily. So there are very low barriers to entry as compared to other programming languages. Now the Python supports various platforms. So we can say can be used to write various programs for mobile as well as some web applications also. So the availability of Python is there on various kind of platforms, and that is another reason why programmers prefer using Python. So every task which you perform on your PC, let's say I minimize this and then reopen it again, maximize it again, then all of that is being done with the help of some program which is in the backend, right? So web applications, the mobile applications which we install, all of them are somewhat getting supported by some programming languages, and since the availability of Python is on various platforms, it makes it another reason why people are preferring to use Python over other programming languages. Now, last but not the least, we can say it is not having any requirement of compiler. When we talk about some other languages, so we need to first compile the piece of code and then only we can execute that. For example, I have this as my code. Now I need to compile that first, then I can execute it. But in the case of Python, the execution happens line by line. So that is another benefit of using Python. So in case you are having some issue in some specific line, there is some error there, then basically it will be a better option to use Python, because it will give you error at that line only, not on the whole code. But if we talk about other languages, if you are having even a small error in line number 50, then from line number 1 to 49 will also not be executed, because the whole code will be we can say executed all at the once. So these are few reasons why Python is something which is most of the people are preferring over other languages. Now today we are going to understand some of the basics of Python. We'll be talking about some of the data types. So if I talk about my Python data types, then we have string as a data type, we have integer as a data type, we have list as a data type, we have dictionaries, and so on. So we have various kinds of data types in your Python scripting and inside your Python language, and depending upon your use cases, you can take the help of these data types. Now we are good with some of the basic understanding of Python, right? We have gotten a little understanding that what kind of data are there. When we talk about string is basically having alphabets, it can be numbers, it can be anything. Integer, we all know integers are the numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all these are integers. List, just like any English term, list contains a number of items. When you store multiple items in a particular format, that becomes a list, right? So in the same way, list is there inside the Python also. When you store multiple items into a list, it will be considered that this particular container is having these numbers of items inside it. Then dictionaries are there to define the data or to store the values with some key names. So we'll be exploring them one by one, but for doing that we need to install Python, right? So let me first quickly help you out that how the Python should be installed into your PC. So what you need to do is you just have to open your browser, go to a new tab and have search for python.org. So you will be there on the Python's official website, and you just have to go to downloads, and from the download section you just have to click on this download for Windows, and your installer will be downloaded here. I already have it in my PC, so I'll cancel that. Now let's say you have some other operating system, then you can just click on the view the full list of downloads, and depending upon your operating system you can select the installer. Once the installer is there downloaded into your PC, we'll open that installer like this. Now in this installer I am getting some options. There is install now, customize installation, then there is this checkbox add Python 3.10 to path. So you need to make sure that you are checking it, as it will allow you to use it for various users. After that, just click on install now. The installation will go ahead. Meanwhile, this gets installed. May I know in the chat box that how many of you are having a little introduction to Python? Okay, so the setup was successful. I am done. I can close this. Now the way to verify that how the installation was done or whether the installation was done successfully or not is just going into your command prompt. So I'll open my command prompt here. I'll search for CMD, open it, and here inside your command prompt you have to run Python and hit enter. Once you say Python and have hit enter, after that you will be entering into this interpreter. Now what is interpreter? So Python is an interpreter based language. Inside this interpreter you can execute all the Python functions and basically perform various tasks which can be done with the capabilities of Python. Now Python can be executed in two methods. First is by using this interpreter, second is by using IDE. Currently we will focus on this one only, and then later in this session only I'll guide you how IDE are used. Now this is my interpreter. I am inside my interpreter. So let's see what is the first function which we are going to try. So I will first try to say print bracket inverted comma hello world, which is basically a ritual which every trainer in the world follows before getting started with any programming language. So hello world, this is the command which we are executing here inside the function called print. Now how do we know that print is a function? When we use parentheses, which basically in English is these brackets, and we put inside those parentheses, we put some value, then that particular function is going to perform some predefined task. Now this print function is there to reply me back whatever input I provide inside it. So when I say print hello world, it is going to give me the output as hello world. If I say print welcome to the webinar, it will print that out. So it gives me the reply welcome to the webinar. Similarly, whatever value you will put inside it, that will be your output. Now welcome to the webinar is the argument and print is basically the function which we are using to get the welcome to the webinar printed out again. This is the first thing to know. What about these inverted commas? So these commas are there to define your string. Whenever you are putting any value inside a function which is not defined in your Python, then you will have to use these inverted commas. So if let's say I have some data which I am writing down for the first time into my script, I haven't defined it earlier in any particular container or any particular variable. I just have this raw data which I want to print. So I will be using these inverted commas. So I can say print. Let's try without inverted commas. I'll say print my name is Chirag and then bracket again, enter. When I say print my name is Chirag, it is going to tell me that it is an invalid syntax. Perhaps you forgot a comma. So it is also going to guide you that maybe this is your error which you are forgetting here. But when I say print my name is Chirag with these commas, then basically the execution will happen without any errors. Now this is the first thing which you can try with the help of Python. Now let's try one more thing. Let's say I want to print out few lines. I want to print my name is Chirag in the first line. Then I want to write down that I am Cisco trainer in my second line. Then what to do? Let's try that. So if I say print comma my name is Chirag and try to hit enter here, then basically it will give me the syntax error again. What is the reason? The reason is line by line execution. So when we deal with Python and interpreter, the execution happens right away when you hit the enter button. So when I say my name is Chirag and press enter key, which I am willing to do for entering a new line, the Python assumes that I am done with my command and it executes that command. And since that command is incomplete, we are getting this syntax error. So the question is, how do we add a new line? So for adding a new line, we use \n. Let's see how it will be used. So I'll say print my name is Chirag, and then after this I will provide /n to basically begin a new line, and then I can say I am a Cisco trainer. Put the closing commas, put the closing bracket, hit enter, and there you go. The output will be there, but in two different lines. My name is Chirag, I am a Cisco trainer. It prints out the output, but into two various and different lines. So I hope I am making sense to you all. I will give you some time later on. At that time you can try to all these functions, but till then I would request you to just focus on whatever I am trying to explain you here. Now we have this /n very useful because ultimately I guess we all must be somewhere connected to networking. I am not sure, like there must be some audience who is not from networking vertical, but if I talk about personally myself, then I use Python for making the networking task automated. So when it comes to networking, interface configuration is the very basic thing, right? We all understand that interface configuration requires some of the commands like interface, then you need to provide the interface name, then the IP address, then the no shutdown, and all these commands must be in different lines. So how can we print that? Let's try it out. So I will basically say that print bracket, begin the inverted comma, enable to enter into my privilege mode, /n to hit enter basically, configure space terminal to get into global configuration mode, again /n because I need to hit enter after that. Then you specify the interface name, right? So let's say interface FA0/1 is what I am willing to configure. So I'll do that and we'll say /n again. After that you provide the IP address, so IP space address 192.168.1.1, 255.255.255.0, that's going to be the subnet mask, again /n, and then no shutdown, and this completes the command, right? So I can close the comma, then can close the brackets again, and when I hit enter, the output will be printed out in different lines: enable, configure terminal, interface FA01, and then the IP, then no shutdown. This is the first method of printing multiple lines by using /n. Now there is another way. That another way is by creating a multi-liner string. Now currently whatever strings we have used here are single liner strings, but we can also create multi-liner strings by using 3 inverted commas. Let's see how would that work. Print bracket comma, instead of 1 I'll put 2 more like this. Then I will say enable, enter. Now when I hit enter after enable, it does not execute the command. Can you check that? I mean, are you able to observe this? Earlier when I tried to hit enter after saying my name is Chirag, then it basically right away executed my name is Chirag. But since there was no closing bracket, no inverted comma, it gave me the syntax error. But when I do the same thing now again, but with triple inverted commas, it is expecting some more inputs from me. So I'll put those inputs. Let's say configure terminal again, hit enter, interface FA0/2, enter, IP address 200.10.1.1, subnet mask, and no shutdown, enter. And when I am done, I will hit enter again, okay. I think, yeah, just a second. Okay, let's redefine it again, no issues. So I'm going to say print bracket, begin the multi-line string. I'll say enable configure terminal interface fa0/2 IP space address 200.10.1.1/24 subnet, like this. Enter, no shutdown. And when you are done, you will close the triple commas and then close the bracket. Hit enter and there you go. So it print out enable configure terminal interface fa02 IP address, then no shutdown, all in different lines. So this is done because we used triple commas, and these triple commas represents that your string is going to be a multi-liner string. Make sense, guys? So this basically is there for defining any output which is going to be in multiple lines. So what have we learned by now? We have learned about print function. Inside the print function, we are putting some strings which we want as the output. And these strings can be in single line, can be in multiple lines. If they are going to be in multiple lines, I can use /n to get a new line into my output. Or I can use a multi-liner string by putting triple commas. Now I have one more question. Let's say I want to print hello, comma, meet me at park, or rather I'll specify the name, meet me at Central Park today. This is the message which I want to print. But there is an issue here. So instead of using single commas, I want to use double commas like this. Hello, meet me at Central Park today. This is something which I want to print. So let's see if we can do that or not. So I'm going to say print bracket inverted comma hello, comma, meet me at inverted comma Central Park, comma, today. Then closing comma, then brackets. Let's try to hit enter. When I try to execute this particular line, it says that there is some syntax error. So can you guys guess what is basically issue here? Can you analyze this? So the issue or the reason why we are getting this syntax error is because the Python understands that the string is beginning from here, which is hello, meet me at, and is getting completed at this comma, which we actually used to define Central Park. But in this case, Python assumes that the syntax is being used for closing the string, and after that, since there is no closing bracket and we still have few lines of codes, that is why it is giving you the syntax error. Then how can I print this? That's again the same question is still there. So in such scenarios, you can use single inverted commas. How? Let's see. I can say print, instead of using double inverted comma, I can put single one also. So it's your choice whether you want to use single or whether you want to use double. You can make the choice by yourself and you can do the execution. It will work in the same manner. So now I am going to use the single inverted comma and I'll say hello, comma, meet me at double inverted comma Central Park, comma, space today, single inverted comma, then closing bracket. When I hit enter, it prints it out without any issue. Why? Because it understands that my string is beginning from single inverted comma and will only complete that when a single inverted comma will be provided again. In between, if there are double inverted commas, I don't have any issues. So that's one way of printing out inverted commas if you have them inside your statement. So these are few things which you can play around with in your Python interpreter. Now we'll talk about storing these values. So as of now, we have been saying that these all are strings, right? Similarly, you can print out some integers also. If I want to say I want to print 1 2 3 like this, then it's going to simply print out 1 2 3. Now currently 1 2 3 is integer, and for integers we don't have to use inverted commas, so that's why it didn't give me an error. But if I say print ABC, enter, then it says that ABC is not defined. So either you will have to say print ABC like this, or you will have to define ABC as a variable. Now what is this variable? Variable is basically a container inside which you can store values. How do we do that? We do that with the help of assignment operator. Now what is assignment operator? Another question. Assignment operator is simply equals to. So what I will do is I'll create a container first. On the left side of your assignment operator, which is your equals to, you will have the variable name. On the right side of your assignment operator, you will define the value. So I can say name, that's going to be my variable name, assignment operator, which is equals to, then inverted comma, Chirag, enter. We don't get any output of this. Why? Because in this line we are just defining that name, which is a variable, which is a container, is storing the value Chirag. Now if I say print and I say name, it's going to print out Chirag because the name container contains the value Chirag. That's how we can use variables to store our data. And the best way of writing any program is defining your data into some container, then calling that container while the execution. So that's the best method, or that's basically how we should be writing down any particular script. So let's try some more examples. If for example, let's say I want to store some IP address. So I'll create another container called IP. I'll say equals to, and then I can store the IP address 10.255.1.101 like this. Now if I say print IP and hit enter, so it's going to give me 10.255.1.101. That's how your variables work. What if I try to store IP but with a capital I and a capital P? So IP is equals to, now this time I will store 10.10.10.10 and hit enter. And what if I say print IP again? So still the outcome is going to be 10.255.1.101. Why? There is a reason. Because this name is with small I and small p, and this name or this variable is there with a capital I and capital P. That means there is a difference between them. So you need to make sure that what particular letters or in what particular format your letters are being used. So if I say age is equals to 23 and then I say with a capital age is equals to 24 and then I say age is equals to 25, then all the three variables are different. If I will say print age all in caps, then it's going to give me 25. If I say print age all in small letters, then it's going to give me 23. That simply means that if you are using some small letters into your variable name, then only if you use the same small or capital letters while you're printing command or while you're execution, then only you can expect the same output. Otherwise, you cannot assume that now after the reassignment the age will become 25 for all of them. They all are different. Now another thing, since we are talking about these variables, what are few ways through which I can define my variable? Like there are some rules through which you can name your variable. So it is not necessary that you can name it anything. So there are few rules behind that. We can say, let's say I want to store my first name. So I will say first space name is equals to Chirag, enter. When I try to execute that, it gives me the error that there is some syntax error which is invalid syntax. Why it is giving me this error? The reason is we cannot use space in a variable name. So we have to use either a underscore, which can look like this: first underscore name is equals to Chirag, like this, or you can say first name without a space is equals to Chirag, like this. It's your choice. So the naming convention of these variables are also important and are also very much essential, that how you are naming them. So it's a big topic and important thing to understand. Now we have talked a lot about these strings and integers, right? Now let's move to the next data type. So we discussed that we are going to talk about strings, which we have discussed. Now integers is simply the numbers, and then the next we have is list here, we have dictionaries here. So let's move to list now. Let's see how list works. Since we are going to have a basic understanding of all these data types, we are good to jump onto list now. So in simpler words, I can simply say that lists are basically used for adding multiple strings or integers inside some container. Now I just have defined age as 23, then I defined age as 24, then I defined age as 25. Can't I create a list of this where I can store all the ages inside one list? Yes, we can do that. Let's see how the list can be created. So you just have to say age, that's going to be my list name. Put the assignment operator. After that, in order to create a list, you need to use square brackets. So inside the square brackets, you are going to define all your elements. So I'm going to say the age first age which I want to store inside my list is 23. Then I can say comma. The next age is 24, comma 25. Then I can close this square bracket, and if I hit enter, we are done. So basically we got the understanding that age is a list which is containing 23, 24, 25. Now if I say print age, then it's going to print out all the three ages. Similarly, you can store any name also inside your list. So let's say I try to create name as my list, and let me store the name of some of the participants here. So we have Pallavi with us. I'll store the name like this, comma. Then I have Amarjeet like this, comma. Bhavna is there. Like this, comma. Roshan, and then the closing square bracket, this one, and we are done. Okay, so I think I made some mistake. Can you guys understand what mistake is there, or can you identify what is the issue here? So the issue which we have in this particular line is that we are not defining the closing inverted comma here. So when I put that and hit enter again, the execution happens without any issue or without any error. So this is very important, that how your syntax is written. You need to understand that. After this, I have created the list of names where I have Pallavi, Amarjeet, Bhavna and Roshan. Now when I say print bracket name and hit enter, I'm getting the complete list. That's how you can store multiple values inside one container. This is called list. But what if I want specifically Amarjeet's name to be printed out? So for that, we need to understand the index value inside this list. So when we talk about list, the index value begins from 0. What does that mean? The first element of your list will be at the position number 0. Next element will be at the position number 1. Then third will be at position number 2, and this one, the last one, will be at the position number 3. So it is 0, 1, 2 and 3. And I am willing to print out Amarjeet's name. So can you guys tell me what is the index number for Amarjeet's name? Is it 0, is it 1, is it 2 or is it 3? What is it? The index number is going to be 1, right? So I will run the command print bracket. I'll call my list name, which is name, and then instead of putting the closing bracket, what I will do is I will open a square bracket like this, and inside it I will store the index value. So what is my index value in this case? For Amarjeet it is 1, right? So I'll put 1, close the square bracket like this, then close the curly bracket, sorry, not the curly bracket, close the parenthesis and hit enter. And there you go. We are not getting the complete list. Instead of that, we are just getting Amarjeet's name. Why? Because we defined that index number I want to be printed out as 1. What if I want Bhavna to be printed out? So I'll change this index number from 1 to 2. Enter. And Bhavna will be printed out. That's how your list works. Now, another question. Now we have got the understanding of list also, but making this list brings us a little trouble also. Like, is it not possible to define these elements with some names? So instead of remembering all these element numbers, I can directly put the name and I can get the output there. Is it possible like that? So for example, let's say I have a database. I'll open the notepad again. Let's say I have the database of myself. So I'm going to say that my name is Chirag. Then I can say the organization I work in is PyNet Labs. Then my role here is instructor. And then I can say courses which I deliver training for are CCNA, CCNP, CCIE and DevNet, let's say. So these are few things which I want to store. Now the first way is by storing them into a list. So how would that be? It would be like this. Let's say employee 1 is equals to a square bracket, since the lists are created with a square bracket. So store the first element as Chirag, comma, second element as PyNet Labs, comma, third element as instructor, comma, last element as CCNA. Now see, we again have multiple elements. What you can do in this case is you can create a list inside a list. So again I'll put a square bracket like this, and then I will store the value CCNA, comma, CCNP, comma, CCIE, comma, DevNet. And then I will close my list of courses by putting a square bracket, then again a square bracket to close the list of my employee 1. Enter. This is the first way of storing these values. But in this scenario, I'll have to remember that at index number 0, I have name. At index number 1, I have organization. At index number 2, I have the role, and so on, right? And since the data is just of one employee, it is easy to remember, right? But what if I have the database of around 20 employees? So it will be very hard for me to remember all of that, right? So in such scenarios, or in data types like these, we take the help of our third data type, which is your dictionary. Now dictionary is a great choice, or is a great option to work with data in a scenario like this. So when we talk about dictionaries, we define the value inside a key. Now let's try to understand how these are created. So I'll try to store the same database but inside a dictionary now. So I'll create my dictionary here with the name employee. Always remember that dictionaries are created with curly brackets. So the lists are created with square brackets, this one, and the dictionaries are created with this one, the curly brackets. So I'll open the dictionary, and inside it I will start defining my database. How? I'll create a key first. The key name is going to be name, and inside that key I'll store the value Chirag. Then I will put a comma. I will create another key, organization, and inside that I will define the value as PyNet labs, comma, another key that's going to be role. Inside this I will store instructor, comma, courses. And now see, now I need to create a list. So what kind of bracket should I use? A square bracket or a curly bracket? I'll be using a square bracket, right? So I'll put a square bracket, and inside it I will store all these values: CCNA, CCNP, CCIE. How? Just like this, like we were defining it earlier. So you can say simply CCNA, comma, CCNP, comma, CCIE, comma, DevNet. Then I will close my list first by putting a square bracket, and then I will close my dictionary by putting a closing curly bracket, like this. That's how I define a dictionary. So let's do that into the interpreter and let's try to see how it works. So I'll open my interpreter again. Here in this interpreter I'll create a dictionary with the name employee is equals to curly bracket. The first element I want to define is name. So name, inside it I will store the value Chirag, comma, organization, inside it I'll store the value PyNet labs, comma, another key which will be my role, inside it I'll store the value instructor, comma, then I can say I'll create another one, courses, inside which I'm going to store the value in a list, right? So I'll create a list by using square brackets, say CCNA, comma, CCNP, comma, CCIE, comma, DevNet. Close the square bracket to complete the list, then close the curly bracket to complete the dictionary. There you go. We have assigned the values into the dictionary called employee. Now I don't have this tension of remembering all the index numbers. I can simply put the key name and the output will be printed out. How? Let's check that. So if I say print employee, and inside the square bracket, instead of putting the index number, we will put the key name. So I'll say that from employee I want the output of name. Close the square bracket, close the opening bracket of print, and then hit enter, and we can see that the output is Chirag, right? Similarly, if I say I want to print courses, or rather I want to print role, so I can change the name to role, hit enter, and we got the output as instructor. So when you define some data into the keys, then there you are using a dictionary. If you define directly with the help of index numbers, then there you are using the list. So it depends what kind of data you have. I'm not saying that list is not good or list is not something which we use, but it is that when you store some data depending upon their categories, then you prefer using dictionaries. And when there is just list of items, let's say you are creating a list of fruits, you are storing apple, banana, grapes, and so on, then you can simply use a list there. Now, how is this going to benefit us? Or how do we take the help of Python for making the process related to networking automated? That is another question. But before jumping on to that, I would like to introduce you to one more function, which is the input function. So I'm going to say, let's say I am not sure what value I'm supposed to store inside something. I want to ask the user that what is their name. So I'll say name is equals to, and we'll use the function input, put the bracket, and here I will ask my user what is your name, or something like enter your name. Then I can close the bracket and hit enter. So it will ask me to enter your name. Now whatever value my user will put, that particular value will be stored inside the variable called name. So if I store the value Chirag and then I say print name, then it's not going to print what is your name or enter your name. It is going to put the value. It will print out the value which I stored inside the variable called name using the function input. So input is the function which we use to take the inputs from our user. Now in this line by line execution, it is a little difficult to understand that how input function can help us. But when we use IDE, we basically print out the whole script all at once, not line by line. So let's see what are the different IDEs which we have. If I go to the browser and search for top IDE, then these are the integrated development environment softwares. Visual Studio Code provided by Microsoft, Eclipse is there, NetBeans is there, PyCharm is there, and so on. We have various options. What are these? These are again some editors which we use for writing down the programming codes. When we write down the programming codes, we take the help of these editors and they make it easy to write down the code. Now I currently have Visual Studio Code, which you can also download by just simply searching for Visual Studio Code download. And from this official page, you can download it. Let me just quickly put these into the chat box. And this is your Python's link. I'll request the team to please pin these messages so that the participants can take the help of them later on. Now, I have basically this Visual Studio Code, which is a IDE, which is better to use for writing down the programming languages. Now, okay, I'll open the Visual Studio Code. This is how it will look like after the installation. So what I'm going to show you now is a part of network automation. So I have an upcoming DevNet batch where we explore all the processes of DevNet and tasks related to networking, how we automate them or how we make the various processes automated with the help of these Python scripts. So we'll talk about that now. We'll show you how these works. In case you want to understand that what basically is going to be the syllabus or when are we starting with this batch, then you can contact Mr. Nitish at 98212-15002. Sorry, yeah, 98212-15002, and he will be guiding you about the upcoming batch of PCNE plus DevNet, where we talk many more features about Python and about the tasks which we can perform using these Python scripts. So you can reach out to him in case you want to understand about this batch. Okay, now let's see what we are going to try to achieve here. So I have a EVNG setup here, inside which I have two routers. This is router 1, this is router 2. What I will try to do is, I will try to put interface configuration on these routers by using a Python script. So let's see what that would be done. Like what would be the requirements to complete that. So the very first requirement is that putting the IP configuration on the routers, which is the very basic thing, right? So you need some IP to manage the devices. So that IP is something which we have to do through the CLI. Then in order to connect to the device remotely, you either need telnet configurations or you need SSH. So we'll do that. We'll configure SSH on these two routers, we'll configure the IP address, and then we will try to put the interface configuration on these devices using Python scripts. So these are some set of commands which you can use for putting the configuration on your device related to SSH. So I'll open the R1 and we'll begin my configuration here. So this is my router 1. Say no to this question. Similarly, here I have the CLI of router 2. I'll say no to the question here also. Once the router comes up, we will begin the process of configuration by putting the IP address on the interface gig 00. There you go. I'm going to say enable config t host name R1 on interface gig 00. IP address I will assign as 10.255.1.101 space 255.255.255.0. So So this is the command which I have executed, then no shutdown to make it up, and then exit. Now I will begin with the SSH configurations. So I will define the domain name here, IP domain -name. I can define it as pynet.com. Enter. After defining the domain name, I'll enable the IP SSH version 2 like this. Then I will create the crypto key which we use for authentication. So I'm going to say crypto key generate RSA general keys modulus of 1024 bits. After creating this key, the next thing I need to do is I need to define the username and database for this. So I'll say username is going to be admin. The privilege I want to give to this user is 15, and then the password I want to configure is Cisco. Then I will go to the virtual lines, line VTY 0 space 4. Then I can say login local to define that the database is supposed to be used, which is defined there locally. And then transport input all to accept all kind of connections. Exit. We are done. Similarly, we'll go to router 2 and we'll put the similar kind of configurations. So what I will do is I'll just copy it from here, and what changes I need here is I will change the IP address from 101 to 102. Then I will change the host name to R2. Control all, copy. Then I'll go to my router 2 and we'll paste it here. Perfect. So this completes the configuration of SSH on both the routers. Now I can check the connectivity. Okay, so another thing. When you want to close the interpreter, you say exit and then you put parenthesis, enter. This will bring you back to your username. Now from here I'll try to ping both my routers. Ping 10.255.1.101. If I get the reply, that means the connectivity is there. So we have the reachability. I'll try to ping the other one, 1.102. And we are getting the replies. Now we will try to write down a script which will be used for interface configurations after creating a SSH session with my routers. So I'll create a new file here. I'll select the text file and then I will save it as a Python file. I'm going to name it the webinar file. So webinar.py, enter. Now there are various libraries inside Python which we use for various functions, and it is all about understanding what library you need at what particular requirement. So I'm going to say I want to import a library called netmiko. Netmiko is the library which we use for managing devices over the SSH connections. So all these things and all these learnings are provided into the DevNet training. So it might sound a little weird to you guys who don't have the introduction to this, but what I mean to represent here, or what is the reason behind doing this, is to give you an understanding that how actually automation process can help you in making the configurations of your devices easier. So I'll use the library called netmiko. I'll say from netmiko import the class connect handler, which is used for creating SSH sessions. Then I will create a list of routers. I'll name my list routers, and inside this list I will store both my IP addresses. So 10.255.1.101 comma 10.255.1.102, like this. I have created both the routers. Now the next thing I would need is my username and password, right? So in order to log into my device, I need username and password. So I'll create a variable called a username, and inside that I will take the input from my user. So for that we need the input function, right? Input, enter your username. something like this. Enter. Then I will use password as my variable name and input. Enter your password. Now you must have observed that execution is not happening. Unlike the interpreter, the IDE executes the script only when you ask it to do. So as of now, we haven't yet commanded the IDE to run the script, so it's going to keep the values with him, and at the end when I will press this run button, then only I can say that these commands will be executed. As of now, we have taken the input for username and password, right? Now we will create a for loop. For loop can be used for putting configurations or executing commands repeatedly. So I'm going to say for router, or rather R in routers, which is my list. What you have to do is you have to create a SSH connection. So I'll create a variable SSH where I'm going to say that I want to create this connection using my function connect handler, and for that I will need to specify some of the details. Now what are these details? You need to specify the IP address, you need to specify the username, then you need to specify the device type. So let's do that. So I'm going to say host is going to be, what's going to be the host? It's going to be R. So R is basically the pointer here, which we are defining inside this for loop, which will carry these values 10.255.1.101, then 10.255.1.102, like this. After that, I can say the next value I need to define is username. What's going to be my username? Username is going to be something which I have defined inside my variable called username. Then again I'll put comma. Then I can say what's going to be my password. Password is going to be something which I have defined inside my variable called password. Okay, I guess there is some error here. Host is equals to I need to define the device type also. Device underscore type, that's going to be Cisco underscore iOS, comma. Okay, yeah. No issues. Let's try to define it in another way. We'll create a dictionary. Let's say router is equals to a dictionary. Inside it, I'll store these values. Host, which will contain the value R, which is basically my pointer, comma. Next thing is going to be the username, which is going to contain the value username. That's basically my variable, comma. Next argument I need to run is password, and then inside password I'll take the input from the variable called password, comma. Last thing I need to do is device underscore type, and inside it we will store Cisco iOS because that is what I have on my topology. After defining this, I can say that I want to create this session. So SSH is equals to connect handler, and under bracket I'll call this dictionary which I have created called router, like this. Now this particular command, the line number 16, is for building the session with my router. After that, I will print out that SSH connection established successfully, like this, and then we will begin the configuration of the commands. So we'll create another list here called commands, which will contain the commands for configuring the IP address or configuring an interface. So I will say I want to configure interface loopback 1, comma, with the IP space address as 200.10.1.1, comma, With the IP, I also need to specify the subnet mask, so 255.255.255.0, and at the end I can say I need to put the description also. Description is going to be configured using Python like this, and then finally no shutdown. Then I want to push these commands onto my configuration mode. So inside this netmiko, we have this particular function which is send config set, which is used to push the configurations or push the commands into the configuration mode directly. So I will say that interface underscore config is equals to ssh dot. Against this, I will use the function send config set, and then in brackets I will call my commands which I want to be pushed on the configuration mode. Then I can simply say print interface underscore config like this. That's the script basically for putting the loopback configuration on both my routers. Let's try to run the script. Let's see what happens after this. So currently if I show you show IP interface brief details, show IP interface brief, then there is no loopback on router number 1. If I show you on router 2, do show IP interface brief, then there is no loopback, right? Now we'll run the script. Okay, there is some error here. It tells you the invalid literal for how many VLANs would you like. Okay, this is for the previous script. Let's ignore this. Let's try to run it again. So it will ask you first that enter your username. So I'm going to say my username is admin. Enter your password. My password is Cisco. SSH connection established successfully. Goes on to router number 1. Creates the loopback 1, provides it the IP address 210.1.1, configures the description, configured using Python, no shutdown, end, and we are done. Then SSH connection established successfully. This is basically with router number 2. Goes on to router number 2, creates the loopback, provides the IP, provides the description, no shutdown, and we are done. That simply means the execution of loopback interface was done successfully. And when I now run show IP interface brief, I can see loopback 1 is created with the IP 210.1.1. And if I show you show running config, let's say, then there we can also observe the description. There you go. So the description also is configured as configured using Python. Similarly, on router number 2, if I say exit and say show IP interface brief, then we have loopback 1 created here as well with the IP 210.1.1. So these are some concepts which we explore more in details in the DevNet training, and this as of now is very static, right? We are just creating a loopback 1 on 2 routers. We have observed that how this can be done on multiple devices, but what if I need to use a different IP on my router 2? What if I need to put 5 configurations on router 2? What if I need to configure OSPF on router 2? All of that we learn in the DevNet training, and for that only you need this Python understanding. So I am also coming up with my DevNet batch where we in the initial days talk about all the fundamentals of Python. We practice Python. After that we get to the DevNet track and discuss the things related to automation. So thank you so much guys. I tried my best to give you the introduction to Python, and I hope that you must be finding it exciting and interesting to learn. So thank you so much. That was all from my side. I hope you enjoyed the session today. I'll see you in some other training. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.